question regarding fraud, and if I understand it correctly, you say that you do extensive questioning, and there's a process that a commissioner or a director or somebody could go through to actually report that to you. At that point, you make some kind of determination, I'm assuming, as to whether or not you think there's been some sort of fraud. From that point, if it's been reported, you then just said that it's your duty to report that back to the council or back to the administration. And then from that point, where would it go if you make some kind of recommendation?
When you say recommendation, you mean if we have, through our inquiry, determined that there possibly is fraud or
possibly not. I mean, somebody could report it and you may disagree with them. Is it still your duty to report back that this has been suggested?
We will review and do as much work as we can to determine if we feel that there is fraud there based on what someone is telling us. And if we feel that possibly there is the possibility of that, then we would go to a level above where that fraud was pointed that it might possibly exist.
Could there be conflict if somebody at a director level is insinuating that there's fraud occurring and it might be somebody who's above them? Could that create some court? I'm just trying to understand the process here.
When you say
a conflict where maybe oftentimes you have people who are in positions who may assume that something is happening, but it could be about somebody they directly supervise, who directly supervise them. In that case, you're saying if somebody reports something, your next step is to go to, for example, if it's somebody they might be insinuating fraud against who's above them, you would be going to that person?
No, we wouldn't be going to the person where the fraud is considered. We would go to someone above that level to make sure that we have someone who would be able to review this with us that wouldn't have a conflict. If someone was a worker, an employee, and there was a supervisor, and the employee was saying the supervisor was committing fraud, we wouldn't go to that supervisor and ask them. One, we would do some inquiry and review some transactions to see if what we thought, and then we would go above that.
So let me just understand this. I'm going to give two examples. If a employee was insinuating a director was having fraudulent accounting practices, you would then go to the commissioner level, correct? Because it would be up above a director.
If that's, normally we would go to the commissioner level,
Okay.
Unless there's another area within the agency where we felt we could go to.
And, okay, I'll come back to that. If there was a director who did it to a commissioner, I would assume then it would go to the mayor, one level above.
That's normally what would that's normally what we would look at, is if there was someone that was we were considered, if there's a position that would be considered to be somewhere fraud was being perpetrated, then we would try to go above that level.
Okay, and then do you make recommendations ever for it to be, if there's something that's been brought to your attention, do you ever make recommendations above and beyond just notifying the next person above, or do you make recommendations, for example, that it go into certain committees to be examined within government, since your role is not really look at fraud, I guess?
Yeah, I think our responsibility is to report it to the entity and let them investigate it, and they would make the decision as to what would be done, whether something needed to be reported to the police or whatever. But we would be the ones who would recommend it to the commissioner, the board, whoever, and say this is what we have these facts here, and we feel that this is something that could be going on. We would like for you all to look into this. Okay, and then you're done after that point. Well, I mean, we have met our responsibility. That doesn't mean we're completely done, because I'm sure there'll be questions come back. Look, you might want to look at these transactions. They might ask us to look at various transactions to see if we see anything in there. Now, then again, you have to get to the point where do you actually have to stop that engagement and start a new engagement, a fraud engagement.
And would that be brought to our attention in your report if you had anybody report any, like you said, there's definitely a process that either commissioners or directors or employees have to go through if they have questions regarding accounting practices and they report those to you, do we see what their questions might be? Do you report that anywhere in your report?
I don't think it would be in this report here, because again, this is not a fraud report, but it would be something that would be brought to the attention of whoever who we felt the responsible board should be.
So I guess my next question is, if something like of this nature is reported to you, there's no way you don't report it to us per se. You're reporting it to somebody within LFUCG. And so if I'm to ask, I would like to see what's been reported over the past 3 years that you've investigated and have made a determination on, who would I go to get that information?
Who would
If there was such communication, it would have probably been to the commissioner level.
And would you all have, I would assume you keep records if this has been reported to you, if we were to request that type of information?
If there's been any fraud?
If anybody has brought to your attention anything that they wanted you to look at through the accounting practices, regardless of your determination, you're the point, it sounds like, of decision as to whether or not it gets reported to a commissioner or not. And I guess my question is, over the past 3 years, how many of these have we had and have you made determinations on? And then where have they gone to after they leave your hands? Can you get that information?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then my next question is, besides the introduction in this book, has anybody within LFUCG written any part of this audit?
The financial statements are prepared by management. So the entire document you're looking at, outside of our 2-page audit report, our audit opinion letter, is the product of LFUCG management.
Okay, thank you.